Breaking news tonight. A shocking announcement has just sent ripples across the nation. An announcement that no one expected, and yet one that could reshape the way millions of people travel, work, and even connect with their loved ones. Just hours ago, the Trump administration imposed strict new limits on flights from Mexico to the United States, a move that has already sparked confusion, concern, and heated debate on both sides of the border. What was supposed to be an ordinary day in international travel has suddenly turned into a moment that many will remember as a turning point. At first, the details trickled in slowly. A sudden directive, confirmed by multiple officials, declared that certain flights would be curtailed immediately, leaving passengers scrambling at airports, airline staff unsure of how to proceed, and businesses bracing for an unexpected shock to their plans. For some, it was simply an inconvenience, but for others, for families separated by borders, for students relying on flights to continue their education, for workers whose livelihoods depend on cross-border travel, this decision felt like a door slamming shut. The question on everyone's mind tonight is simple. Why now, and why in this way? Some inside sources suggest this was about more than just aviation policy. They point to growing tensions over trade, security, and the long-standing political debates over immigration. Others argue that this move was aimed at putting pressure on the Mexican government at a delicate time. Still, nothing about the official statement answered the deeper questions, leaving analysts and ordinary citizens alike grasping for clarity. For travelers caught in the chaos, the human stories speak louder than policy papers ever could. One woman waiting at Mexico City International Airport described holding a ticket to visit her husband in Houston, only to be told her flight was canceled without warning. A businessman explained how his company relies on weekly shipments of goods now threatened by uncertain logistics. And beyond the headlines, countless families wonder whether birthdays, weddings, and long-awaited reunions will now be put on hold. But the shockwaves extend far beyond personal inconvenience. Economists are warning of disruptions to trade worth billions of dollars. Airlines face massive losses, and tourism officials fear an even greater downturn in an industry still trying to recover from previous global shocks. Mexican officials have already called the measure damaging and unnecessary, while voices in Washington defend it as a strong step toward securing national interests. The clash of perspectives is fueling a storm of reactions, not only in the political arena but also in living rooms, boardrooms, and border towns. Globally, the implications are just as serious. Other countries are now watching closely, wondering if this marks the beginning of a new era of stricter controls in air travel, one that could spread far beyond Mexico and the U.S. The international community is asking whether this decision signals a policy shift that could reshape diplomatic ties and spark retaliatory moves in trade and cooperation. What makes this moment so gripping is not only the immediate disruption but the uncertainty it unleashes. No one knows how long the restrictions will last, what further actions might follow, or how deeply this will affect daily life for those who live and work across borders. The only thing certain tonight is that a sudden announcement has changed everything, leaving behind questions, tensions, and a world waiting anxiously for what comes next. This is a story still unfolding, and we will be here to bring you the latest as it develops. The announcement itself was startling, but what truly has everyone talking are the hidden reasons no one saw coming. Just when the nation thought it understood the motives behind the Trump administration's decision to limit flights from Mexico, new layers of information have begun to surface, painting a picture that is far more complex than anyone expected. At first glance, it seemed like a straightforward policy move, perhaps tied to immigration or national security. But as insiders and analysts dig deeper, the story takes unexpected turns, revealing motives that go beyond the surface. The first hints came not from the official statement, but from whispers inside the aviation industry. Airline executives, caught off guard, quietly admitted that the decision did not follow the usual pattern of negotiations or safety concerns. Instead, several pointed to mounting political pressure and private disputes that had been brewing quietly between Washington and Mexico City. Trade disagreements, long-standing border tensions, and even upcoming election strategies may have played roles in shaping this sudden policy. And that leaves many wondering whether this move was less about flights and more about leverage. Travelers at airports are beginning to piece together the impact, but they too sense there is more behind the curtain. One student stranded in Cancun expressed frustration, saying it felt like ordinary people were being used as pawns in a bigger political game. Families separated by borders worry that the restrictions are not about safety, but about making a statement. Their stories, full of uncertainty and emotion, remind us that behind every political decision are lives disrupted and relationships put on hold. Economists and policy experts warn that the ripple effects could grow wider. Some believe the decision is tied to trade negotiations that had stalled in recent weeks, with the flight restrictions serving as a form of pressure. Others see it as a move designed to appeal to certain voters at home, where border policies remain a powerful issue. Still others suggest that security concerns were quietly driving the agenda, though no clear evidence has been presented to the public. The lack of transparency only deepens the mystery, fueling speculation and leaving room for multiple interpretations. On the international stage, the announcement has triggered new questions. Could this mark the start of tougher U.S. measures against Mexico, not just in aviation but across other industries? Mexican officials have responded cautiously, but behind closed doors there is concern that this could escalate into a larger diplomatic standoff. Neighboring countries are watching closely, aware that what happens here could set a precedent that stretches far beyond one border. What makes this story especially gripping is the suspense. The sense that the official version leaves out more than it reveals. Viewers tonight are left to wonder, was this about protecting security, pressuring a trade partner, or positioning for political advantage? Perhaps it was all three at once. The truth may only come into focus in the weeks ahead, as the hidden reasons continue to emerge and the consequences unfold step by step. One thing is clear. This is not just about planes, airports, or schedules. It is about power, strategy, and the unseen forces that shape the headlines we wake up to. And as more details surface, one fact remains certain. The story behind the announcement may prove even more significant than the announcement itself. Stay with us, because this is far from over. While headlines focus on politics and power, the real weight of the Trump administration's decision to restrict flights from Mexico is being felt not in government offices, but in the everyday lives of ordinary people. For those watching from afar, it may appear to be just another policy move, another line added to the never-ending debate over borders and security. But for the families, workers, and travelers caught in the middle, this is not a headline. It is a disruption to their daily reality, a decision that suddenly touches every corner of their lives. In airports across Mexico and the United States, the impact was immediate. Families with tickets in hand were told their flights were canceled. Some stood in disbelief, clutching documents and luggage, while others broke down in frustration, unsure how to explain to loved ones that they would not be arriving after all. One mother waiting in Monterrey described her heartbreak as she tried to board a flight to reunite with her son in Los Angeles, only to be told she would have to wait indefinitely. For her, this was not about policy, but about missing a moment she had been waiting months to share. Workers and students are also finding themselves at the mercy of this sudden change. A young engineer who commuted regularly between Mexico City and Dallas for his job now wonders if his career will be jeopardized. A college student attending classes in the U.S. faced the fear that she may not return in time to meet deadlines or complete exams. These stories reveal the human side of a decision that, on paper, looked like a political strategy, but in practice lands hardest on those who have the least say in shaping it. Businesses, too, are feeling the strain. Small exporters who rely on cross-border flights for shipments are warning of delays that could wipe out weeks of income. Tourism operators in both countries, already under pressure from global economic shifts, now face another obstacle in attracting visitors. For local communities, especially in border towns, the lifeline that connects families and commerce has been partially severed, leaving many to wonder how long they can hold on if the restrictions remain in place. The emotional toll is just as heavy as the economic one. Reunions have been postponed, celebrations have been missed, and plans made months in advance are unraveling in real time. It is easy to think of international policy as something abstract, distant, or impersonal. But tonight we are reminded that every sweeping government decision echoes down to the individual level where people live with the consequences. Beyond the human stories lies the growing uncertainty about what comes next. If this is only the beginning of tighter travel measures, how many more families, students, and workers will be caught in the crossfire? How many small businesses will be forced to shut their doors because of disruptions they cannot control? These are the questions ordinary people are asking, even as leaders frame the decision as a matter of national interest. In the end, the cost of this announcement will not be measured only in policy debates or political victories. It will be measured in missed flights, broken plans, and the quiet struggles of people simply trying to live their lives. And that is why this story is far from just another headline. It is a reminder that the hardest impact always falls on those with the least power to change it. This is a moment that will not be forgotten quickly, and the world will be watching to see how much further the shockwaves reach. A decision made in Washington is already echoing far beyond the walls of government buildings, sending shockwaves across borders and rippling through power circles around the world. The Trump administration's move to restrict flights from Mexico was first seen as a domestic policy shift, but within hours it became clear that the consequences would stretch far beyond airports and airline schedules. What may have started as a single directive has quickly turned into a chain reaction, touching diplomacy, trade, and the delicate balance of international relationships. The ripple effect began almost instantly. In Mexico City, government officials voiced their disappointment, warning that this kind of measure would not only disrupt travelers but also undermine trust between two nations that share deep economic and cultural ties. In border communities, mayors and local leaders expressed concern that what begins with travel restrictions could soon spill into other areas, tightening the flow of goods, workers, and vital connections that have long sustained life on both sides. It was no longer just about planes in the sky. It was about the lifeline of cooperation suddenly placed in jeopardy. As the hours passed, the impact spread outward. Airline executives warned of mounting losses, while business leaders in both Mexico and the United States began to calculate the economic fallout. Trade organizations reminded the public that cross-border flights are not only about tourism, but also about critical supply chains, delivering everything from fresh produce to essential components for manufacturing. A single canceled flight might mean a store without inventory or a factory without parts, and multiplied across days and weeks, the damage becomes staggering. Diplomatic circles also began to stir. European and Asian governments, watching closely, wondered whether this signaled a broadcast shift in U.S. policy, a willingness to use travel and trade restrictions as a tool of political leverage. Some analysts suggested this could embolden other nations to adopt similar tactics, raising the risk of tit-for-tat measures that disrupt global stability. Allies quietly questioned how far the United States would go, while rivals looked for opportunities to exploit the growing friction. What seemed at first like a bilateral issue between Washington and Mexico is already becoming a test case for international diplomacy. Behind the scenes, political strategists debated the motives. Was this primarily about border security, or was it part of a larger strategy tied to trade negotiations and upcoming elections? Whatever the intent, the move placed pressure not only on Mexico's leadership but also on American politicians who must now answer to constituents caught in the fallout. From Congress to state governors, the ripples are being felt in every corner of the political landscape, forcing leaders to choose their stance carefully in a moment that could shape future alliances. For ordinary people, the ripple effect is less abstract and more immediate. Families are facing canceled flights, businesses are scrambling to adapt, and uncertainty is becoming the new normal. But beyond the personal hardships lies a larger question. How far will these ripples spread, and what will they mean for the fragile web of connections that bind nations together in an increasingly interdependent world? Tonight, one thing is clear. A single announcement has grown into something far bigger, touching lives, economies, and the balance of power itself. The decision to restrict flights has become more than a travel policy. It is a reminder of how quickly the actions of leaders can ripple outward, shaping events far beyond their original intent. And as those ripples continue to expand, the world waits to see just how far they will go. The Trump administration's decision to impose strict limits on flights from Mexico has sparked confusion, frustration, and heated debate. But beyond the immediate headlines, what lingers are the unanswered questions. Questions that raise even bigger fears about what this move truly means and where it might lead. Officials have confirmed the restrictions, but the reasoning behind them remains clouded in ambiguity, leaving analysts, travelers, and governments alike guessing about what comes next. And in the silence, speculation has only grown louder. At first, it seemed like this was simply about security. Some insiders hinted at concerns over undocumented migration or border enforcement. Others suggested the move was tied to health and safety standards in aviation. But no clear explanation has been laid out in detail, and that uncertainty is feeding anxiety on both sides of the border. If this was purely a security issue, why was there no prior warning? If it was about trade or politics, why the sudden shift without public discussion? The lack of transparency is leaving room for interpretations that are far more alarming than any official statement so far. For travelers stranded at airports, the fear is personal. Parents separated from their children, students unable to return to their universities, and workers whose jobs depend on cross-border movement are left in limbo, wondering whether their lives will be disrupted for days, weeks, or even longer. One man waiting in Tijuana described the panic of not knowing when he would see his family in San Diego again. Another in Dallas admitted he worried the restrictions could eventually cost him his livelihood. Their voices capture the very human side of this story. Ordinary people living in extraordinary uncertainty. But the questions do not stop at the border. Economists are asking how long supply chains can hold up under the strain of disrupted flights. Businesses worry about missed shipments, canceled contracts, and rising costs. Tourism leaders fear another devastating blow to an industry still struggling to recover from past crises. And beyond the economics, political observers are warning of potential retaliation. Could Mexico respond with measures of its own? Could this spark broader tensions that bleed into trade deals, diplomatic cooperation, or even security partnerships? The unanswered questions grow larger when viewed in a global context. Other nations are watching closely, wary of what this decision signals about future U.S. policy. If flights from Mexico can be restricted so suddenly, what might happen with other countries? Could this be the beginning of a new era of tightened travel controls, not just for security, but for political leverage? The uncertainty is fueling speculation that this move could set off a chain reaction with consequences that reach far beyond North America. What makes this moment especially tense is not what we know, but what we don't. How long will the restrictions last? Will they expand to other sectors? And most importantly, what message is truly being sent behind the scenes? For now, the administration has left those questions unanswered, and it is that silence that fuels the deepest concern. Tonight, as families wait for clarity, as businesses brace for losses, and as governments quietly maneuver in the background, one truth is undeniable. The unknown has become more unsettling than the announcement itself. The unanswered questions are casting longer shadows than the policy, and until those answers arrive, the fear of what could come next will continue to grow. This is a story far from finished, and we will be watching closely as it unfolds. A decision that began as a policy shift has now reached a boiling point, and many are calling it the climax of a growing storm. The Trump administration's move to restrict flights from Mexico is no longer just a matter of canceled tickets or delayed trips. It has become a moment that could shape the future of travel, trade, and international relations. What makes this story so powerful is not only the disruption it has already caused, but the larger question it raises. Where does this all lead, and what role must each of us play in facing the changes ahead? From the moment the restrictions were announced, the consequences rippled quickly. Families found themselves torn apart by canceled flights, businesses scrambled to adapt, and border towns felt the pinch almost immediately. But over time, it became clear that this wasn't just about air travel. This was about leverage, about testing the strength of alliances, and about redefining how two neighboring countries interact at one of the most crucial moments in their shared history. Every day, the restrictions remain, the stakes grow higher, pulling ordinary people, political leaders, and global markets into a web of uncertainty. What transforms this into a turning point is the way it forces deeper questions about trust, cooperation, and the balance of power. For Mexico, it is not only a matter of economics, but of sovereignty. How far will they bend under pressure, and at what cost to their people? For the United States, it raises questions about leadership, priorities, and the willingness to use everyday lives as bargaining chips in larger political battles. And for the world, it signals that even established partnerships can be shaken suddenly, with little warning, and with consequences no one can fully predict. Ordinary people remain at the center of this storm, the mother waiting to reunite with her son, the student worried about missing her exams, the small business owner facing losses with every passing day. Their struggles make this story more than a headline. They make it a human drama that demands attention. And yet their voices are often drowned out by the political noise, leaving viewers like you to wonder what can actually be done in the face of decisions that seem so far out of reach. The truth is, moments like this remind us that the future is not only shaped in government halls, but also in how people respond. Staying informed, asking questions, and refusing to accept uncertainty without accountability are steps anyone can take. History is filled with turning points that seemed sudden at the time, but later revealed themselves to be the start of new chapters. This moment has all the markings of such a turning point, one that could reshape how nations negotiate, how borders function, and how individuals adapt to forces larger than themselves. And so, as the dust continues to settle, we are left with a powerful reality. This is not just about flights, policies, or headlines. This is about a future in motion, one that may look very different depending on the choices made today. The climax has arrived, and the story is still being written. The only question now is, how will we choose to face it? This is one you'll want to keep watching.